The whole family sat together at the dinner table in Lusaka, laughing and passing plates like it was any other rare family night. Then, in the middle of the chatter, Mr. Chikond leaned back and asked in the calmest voice, $200,000. Where is it? The room went silent. I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth, not sure what he meant. My sister Tamara, sitting across from me, turned pale as if all the blood drained from her face. I looked at her, confused, but she avoided my eyes. Dad's question hung in the air like smoke, thick and heavy. I thought of my long hours working 2 jobs, saving every coin, being careful with money. But none of this made sense. What did I have to do with $200,000? Then I saw it in Tamara's trembling hands, in her darting eyes. She knew. And suddenly, I realized this dinner wasn't about food or family bonding. It was a trap. Dad pressed again, his voice sharper this time. Mom jumped in, urging me to be a good sister. That's when I understood. Tamara had dragged my name into something. The truth was darker than I imagined. She had forged my signature on loan papers, and now the bank thought I was the guarantor. I stared straight at her and asked, steady and calm, Tamara, why did the bank call me your guarantor? Gasps filled the room. Her face collapsed, and the whole family finally saw what I had known in my gut. This wasn't my debt. It was hers. I always believed in working hard for everything I had. For years, I lived simply, saving every little bit I could. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes leaving one shift only to rush straight into the next. It wasn't easy, but I told myself the sacrifice would be worth it. I dreamed of having enough to stand on my own feet, maybe move to a new city, maybe even help my parents when they grew older. Every coin, every long night, every tired morning, I counted it as part of my journey to a better life. What I didn't know was that, while I was busy building my future, my sister Tamara was quietly destroying mine. She had been signing my name on documents I had never seen, tying me to a mysterious loan of $200,000. She didn't just copy my handwriting, she studied it, practiced it, and forged it so well that the bank believed every signature was mine. In the eyes of the world, I was the one who had borrowed all that money. But fate has a way of catching up. In one of the documents, Tamara slipped. Maybe she was in a rush, maybe she got careless, but she left behind a mistake, something small but enough to expose her. And that mistake became my lifeline. That night at the dinner table, I finally understood why Dad had called the family together. It wasn't about bonding or sharing a meal. It was an ambush. The plan was simple: corner me, guilt me, and make me take responsibility for a debt I never touched. They thought I would fold under the pressure, stay silent, and sacrifice myself for family honor. As I sat there, listening to my father's heavy voice, watching my mother plead with her eyes, and seeing Tamara's face as pale as paper, I felt a storm rising inside me. All the years of hard work, all the nights I cried alone while juggling jobs, all the sacrifices I made, it was all being crushed by a lie. A lie signed in my name. I wanted to scream, to stand up and shout at them all, but I didn't. Instead, I kept quiet, letting them believe I was trapped. Because deep down, I knew something they didn't. Tamara's mistake was my weapon, and I was not going down for a crime I never committed. The silence at that dinner was louder than any argument. Dad pushed his plate aside, demanding answers. Mom begged me to show compassion. Tamara looked like she might faint. And me? I just sat there, calm on the outside, but burning on the inside. They thought they had me cornered. They thought I was powerless. But I already knew, this wasn't my downfall. This was just the beginning of their reckoning. Dad's voice grew sharper as he pressed the question again. Where is the money? He demanded, his eyes locked on me as if I held the answer. My heart pounded, but before I could speak, my mother leaned forward, her voice soft but heavy with meaning. My daughter, she said, you must be a good sister. Help Tamara out of this. She didn't mean for it to get this far. Her words felt like knives cutting into me. Be a good sister. Did being a good sister mean sacrificing everything I had worked for to clean up someone else's mess? Then Dad revealed the part that made my stomach twist. The creditors have been calling, he said slowly, each word sinking like a stone. They are threatening to take our home if this is not resolved. Do you understand? We could lose everything. His voice shook, not with pity but with frustration, as if the weight of the world had been dumped on his shoulders. Suddenly it was clear, this wasn't just about money. It was about the house we grew up in, the place that carried all our family memories. And somehow, they wanted me to carry the blame, to take the burden as if I had chosen it. Across the table, Tamara broke into loud sobs. She buried her face in her hands, rocking back and forth as if she were the victim of some cruel injustice. But her performance didn't fool me. Between her sobs, her eyes flicked toward me again and again, sharp and nervous, as if begging me to take the fall. It wasn't sorrow in her eyes. It was fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of responsibility. That was the moment everything clicked in my mind. This dinner wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't about family time or sharing a meal. It was a carefully planned setup, staged to corner me, to guilt me, to force me into paying for a mistake that wasn't mine. The way Mom pleaded, the way Dad demanded, the way Tamara pretended to break down, it was all part of the trap. They thought my love for family, my silence, and my sense of duty would push me into saying yes. I sat there, feeling the pressure pressing in from all sides, but instead of crumbling, I felt a strange calm settle over me. My eyes moved from Dad's stern face to Mom's pleading one, then back to Tamara's trembling act. And in that instant, I knew I had two choices: either let myself be the scapegoat or stand up against all of them. They wanted me to be the savior, the sacrifice, the one who gave up everything to save the family. But I knew better now. This was betrayal, not love. This was manipulation in broad daylight, right in front of me. And as Tamara's fake sobs filled the room, I made a silent promise to myself: I would not take the blame. Not this time. I sat there with everyone's eyes on me, the weight of the room pressing down like a heavy blanket. My father's voice still echoed in my ears, my mother's pleading words circling in my head, and Tamara's fake sobs filling the silence between us. They thought I would give in. They thought I would bend and say, "Yes, I'll fix this." But instead, I took a slow breath, steadied my voice, and dropped the question that turned the whole table upside down. "Tamara," I said calmly, almost softly, "why did the bank call me your guarantor?" The word sliced through the air like a blade. For a moment, no one moved, no one even breathed. Then I heard the collective gasp, sharp and loud, as if the whole room had been slapped at once. Tamara's face went white, ghostly pale, her lips trembling as her eyes darted to Dad, then Mom, then back to me. She had played the victim so well a moment ago, but now the mask was gone. Everyone could see it, she was cornered. Dad's mouth dropped open. His brows furrowed, his face twisting in shock. "Guarantor," he repeated, almost choking on the word. It was clear he hadn't known the full truth. He had believed Tamara's tears, believed her excuses, and thought I was being stubborn. But now the truth was standing naked in front of him, undeniable and brutal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply reached into my bag, pulled out a thin folder I had kept hidden for weeks, and laid it gently on the table. "Here," I said, sliding the papers toward Dad. "These are copies of the loan agreements. Notice the signatures." His hands trembled as he picked them up. He stared at the scrawled names, at the shaky lines that tried to mimic my handwriting. I could see his eyes widen as he realized what I had already known: they were forgeries. Every single one of them. I watched him flip through page after page, his jaw tightening, his breathing heavy. He looked at me, then at Tamara, then back at the papers again. This isn't your signature," he whispered, his voice low, almost breaking. Tamara tried to speak, but her voice cracked. She stuttered, tears spilling down her cheeks, but no words came. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. My mother looked between us, her face pale, her lips pressed tight as if she wanted to defend Tamara but couldn't find the courage. For weeks, I had kept this secret to myself. I had discovered the truth quietly, piecing it together with every document, every call, every slip Tamara had made. And now, at this table where they had tried to trap me, I turned their plan inside out. The power shifted in that moment. I was no longer the accused, no longer the scapegoat. I was the one holding the proof, the one holding the truth. And as the room sat frozen, all eyes wide, all mouths shut, I knew they could never look at me the same way again. The room exploded the moment the papers hit the table. Dad's chair screeched against the floor as he shot up, waving the documents in his hands. "Tamara, what is this? Explain yourself." His voice boomed so loudly that the walls seemed to shake. Mom rushed to her feet too, but instead of facing the truth, she stretched out her arms, trying to calm him down. "Please, don't shout," she begged, her voice trembling. "We're family. We can work through this quietly." But there was nothing quiet about the storm that had just broken loose. Tamara was sobbing harder now, her body shaking, her words tumbling out in broken pieces. At first she denied, then she stammered, then finally the truth ripped its way out. I took the loan, she cried, her voice cracking. It wasn't for me, it was for Brian. Everyone froze. Brian? Dad snapped, his face darkening. Who is Brian? Tamara hesitated, her lips trembling, before whispering, my boyfriend, in Nairobi. He needed money. His nightclub was failing. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then Dad's fist slammed against the table so hard that the plates rattled. A nightclub, he roared. You risked your family, forged your sister's name, for a nightclub. Tamara covered her face with her hands, rocking back and forth, the picture of regret. But what she said next made everything worse. Between sobs, her words fell like knives. He's gone. He took half the money and disappeared. The air grew heavy, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. Betrayal and rage swirled in the room like a storm ready to tear the roof off. Dad's face was red with fury, his breath short and sharp. Mom's eyes filled with tears as she kept whispering, "Oh God, oh God." Tamara was a wreck, crying into her hands, but even then her eyes flicked up at me, almost pleading, as if I still had the power to save her. And I did have the power, but not the way she wanted. I sat there, calm, watching the chaos unfold around me. Inside, my heart beat steady, my hands were still, my mind was clear. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling for answers. I wasn't the one being cornered. The truth was out in the open, and I held the upper hand. I looked at Tamara through her tears, at my mother who still tried to protect her, and at my father who looked like the ground had been ripped from under him. In their eyes, the family was falling apart. In mine, the truth was finally setting me free. They shouted, they wept, they argued, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The papers in front of me, the truth spilling from Tamara's own mouth, had already spoken louder than anything else. And as the chaos rattled the walls of our home, I sat quietly in my chair, holding all the power they once thought I didn't have. For the first time, the weight was no longer on me, it was on them. The shouting in the room finally died down, leaving only the sound of Tamara's sobs and Dad's heavy breathing. Mom sat with her face buried in her hands, whispering prayers under her breath, as if that could undo everything. All eyes slowly turned to me, waiting, expecting. I could feel it, the unspoken hope that I would step in, carry the weight, and save the family. For a moment, I let the silence stretch, letting them sit in their own chaos. Then I spoke, my voice calm but firm. I have no obligation to pay this debt. None. They all stared at me in shock, as if I had just spoken in a language they couldn't understand. Mom gasped softly, shaking her head. But you're her sister. Family helps family. Dad's eyes narrowed, his lips pressed tight. He was waiting for me to change my mind, waiting for me to fold the way I always did. But I didn't. I leaned back in my chair, steady as a stone, and let the truth roll out. For years, I've been working quietly, saving, planning. While you thought I was barely surviving, I was building. I have a new job in Johannesburg. I've made investments. I've created my own fortress. And none of you knew because I never needed your approval. I saw their eyes widen. The shock on their faces told me they had never imagined I could have such a life outside of their shadow. Tamara's tears slowed. She looked at me, confused, almost betrayed. She had counted on me being the weaker one, the easy scapegoat. But now she was realizing I had been steps ahead all along. I let the silence grow thicker before I delivered the final blow. I leaned forward, my voice sharp, each word cutting clear through the air. I don't owe $200,000. But Tamara does. Alone. The words hung in the air like thunder after lightning. No one moved. Dad's jaw tightened, his face pale with realization. Mom looked like she had been struck, her lips trembling, unable to form a response. And Tamara. Her face was frozen, her mouth open as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came out. The silence that followed was unbearable. It pressed on the walls, pressed on their chests, pressed on Tamara most of all. She looked smaller in that moment, almost shrinking into her chair, the weight of her actions crashing down on her. For once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the quiet sister in the corner. I felt powerful, free, untouchable. I sat back, folding my hands on the table, my eyes never leaving Tamara's. You forged my name. You made the choice. And now you live with it. This isn't my cross to carry. My voice was calm, almost gentle, but the words hit harder than any scream. No one dared to answer. The room was filled with a silence so heavy it almost hurt to breathe. For the first time, the burden wasn't on me. It was exactly where it belonged, on Tamara. Dad sat back in his chair, his face pale, the papers still in his trembling hands. For years, he had looked at me with suspicion, always questioning my choices, always doubting if I was capable. At the same time, he had trusted Tamara completely, showering her with praise, defending her whenever she slipped, believing every word she said. Now the truth sat on the table in black and white, and the daughter he trusted most was the one who had betrayed him. The daughter he doubted was the one who stood strong, calm, and unshaken. His pride cracked right in front of me. For a long moment, he didn't speak. His eyes darted between me and Tamara, his lips tightening as if he was swallowing rocks. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I was wrong," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight I had never heard before. The room froze. My father never admitted he was wrong. He never apologized. But now his eyes met mine, soft and tired. "I doubted you. I put my trust in the wrong place. I'm sorry." The words stung and healed at the same time. A part of me had waited my whole life to hear them, yet another part wondered why it had taken such disaster for him to see me clearly. I nodded slowly, not gloating, not smiling, just letting the truth settle. It was too late for his apology to undo the years of being overlooked. Too late to erase the wound of being treated as less. Days later, the storm outside the dinner table arrived at our door. The creditors came, men in dark suits with sharp voices and no patience for excuses. They weren't interested in family loyalty or tears. They wanted their money, and they wanted it fast. Tamara tried to explain, crying, pleading, but their faces were like stone. Papers were handed over, signatures demanded, and soon she was being dragged into court. The very debt she tried to pin on me now sat squarely on her shoulders, and there was no one left to take it from her. I watched quietly from the side. I didn't feel joy in her downfall, but I didn't feel pity either. This was the choice she had made, and now she had to live with the consequences. My parents stood by helplessly, the illusion of their favorite daughter shattered. They saw her for who she was, and for the first time, they saw me too. That dinner table, once meant to corner me, had become the very place where everything flipped. It was no longer my trap but my freedom. It was where the truth shattered years of favoritism, lies, and silence. It was where I finally broke the chains that had kept me small. And as Tamara's footsteps echoed toward the courtroom, I knew one thing with certainty: the power they thought I never had been sitting inside me all along, waiting for this moment to be revealed. Months passed, and life moved in a direction I had only dreamed of. I left Lusaka behind and settled into my new job in Johannesburg. The city was alive, full of opportunity, and for the first time in years, I felt light. I built myself up, stronger than before, investing wisely, creating the life I had fought so hard for. I was no longer the quiet sister in the background. I was thriving, free, and untouchable. Back home, the story was different. Tamara could no longer hide behind tears or excuses. The creditors pressed harder, the court dates piled up, and her once perfect image crumbled piece by piece. The boyfriend she had risked everything for had vanished, and with him went any hope of a rescue. She was left to stand in the harsh light of her own choices. My parents, too, were forced to see the truth they had ignored for years. Their favoritism collapsed under the weight of reality. The daughter they protected had betrayed them, and the one they doubted had risen above them all. It was a bitter lesson, carved into the walls of our home and into their hearts. When I finally returned for a visit, the silence in the house was different. No one dared to corner me, no one dared to question me. I looked at them, Dad, Mom, Tamara, and I said the words that had been sitting in my chest since that night. Ghost white faces aren't from fear, I told them. They're from seeing the truth you can't escape. The dinner that was meant to trap me had done the opposite. It had freed me, exposed them, and shifted the power forever. And I walked away knowing nothing would ever be the same again.